Number 18. New Testament theologist says, how do you explain the subordination of Jesus? And you give two verses. We'll read both of those. To the Father within Trinitarian theology. I explain it via incarnational subordination. Philippians 2:5, Hebrews 29. Maybe you meant 2:9. And 5:8. You give me 5 scripture references. We probably won't be able to sit and sift through all of that for the sake of the Q&A, because it's just, it is what it is. But we'll look at a couple of them. I want you to understand that Christ is the head of every man, and the man is the head of woman, and God is the head of Christ. So you explain this in relation to incarnation, the incarnation. Here's the thing that people would want to know. There's at least a few different views about how how the Son is submissive to the Father. And is that something that happened at the incarnation, or is it something that has always been going on eternally? The eternal subordination of the Son, or is it more like you said, incarnational subordination of the Son? And so if you take the incarnational view, you say, well, look, Christ is submitted to the Father, right? We read John, we read that Jesus is walking and only doing what the Father tells him to do. He's walking in submission clearly. He's humbled himself, which is why I think you've referenced Philippians 2:5. He humbled himself, lowered himself. So that's submission to the Father. He says, while he's on the earth, the Father's greater than I. I view that in an incarnational sense. But it doesn't mean it doesn't have an eternal sense as well. So I'm not settled on this issue. The incarnational answer helps us with a lot of things, and it makes a lot of sense. The question is, can you limit it to the incarnational answer and say that there is no submission? There is no submission before the incarnation. It would be that would be kind of the limiting that I'm not ready to do. When all things are subjected to him, then the Son himself also will be subjected to the one who subjected all things to himself, so that God may be all in all. So here we have the Son who's subjecting himself to the Father post-glorification. Okay, so it's not just that he submitted post-glorification. There's a sense of submission. My thought is that at least this verse seems to give credence to the idea that there's not a problem with the Son always having a submission attitude towards the Father, that this might actually be part of how God shows love within the Trinity. That submission is another feature of love. Leading and submitting are features of love, that if those things aren't possible because there's no submission within the members of the Trinity, then perhaps there's like a deficiency that's there. So yeah, maybe that's, I guess I lean towards the eternal one, but I'm not settled on it, and I don't have a really dogmatic, strong perspective on it. So I think that you can explain, my short answer, you can explain several things through a incarnational element, and that it may have been that the incarnational element changed or increased the submission of the Son, but that doesn't mean that there's no submission at all eternally prior to that. And I would lean towards thinking there is, but I'm not settled.